This episode discusses topics of suicide and mental illness. If you or a loved one is having thoughts of suicide, whether or not you are in a crisis, call or text 988 or chat at 988lifeline.org.
The emoji sitting in front of you right now is an emoji that wants to use my music for a message, for purpose.
Hey everyone, this is Amber Key, and you're listening to a Bright Idea podcast, a show where I sit down with entrepreneurs to hear about the aha moment that launched their businesses. On this week's episode, we're joined by Emma G., author, award-winning writer, two-time TedX speaker, and youth empowerment coach. Emma uses the magic of music to uplift and motivate audiences worldwide. Born with a rare neurological condition called hydrocephalus, Emma G. has recovered from multiple traumas, including 10 brain surgeries, by writing and singing her truth, sharing her experiences, and turning her lessons into blessings. Emma's goal is to save the world one song at a time. Through the music she composes and the songs she helps teenagers write on their own, Emma G. is a force, and she has created such an impactful way to empower our youth.
So I was born in a relatively small town, especially by American standards, in New Zealand. So I was born and raised in Raglan, and which is a small surf town on the west coast of the North Island in New Zealand. Raised there and then raised in Hamilton up until my 20s before I moved to Auckland. But the reason why, one of the main reasons why I sort of transitioned from Raglan to Hamilton at a young age is because I was born with a condition called hydrocephalus, which literally translates to water on the brain. So, quick medical lesson is, everybody's brains floats in water, otherwise known as cerebral spinal fluid. That cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF for short, changes on a day-to-day basis by between 400 and 800 milliliters a day. And for most people, that's fine and dandy. But for me, I have a cyst the size of my fist in the center of my cranium, which means that water can get into my head, but it has no way of escaping. So when I was diagnosed at the tender age of 4 months old, I had my first brain surgery to insert a shunt, or a really long straw, into my cranium, which led down into my peritoneal cavity, my tummy area, to drain out the water. And I'm really, really lucky and grateful that I could, have that technology exist for real in New Zealand back in, the late 80s. But not everybody's so lucky. And it's one of those conditions that it shows up really differently depending on who you are, depending on what part of the brain it's affected. And just, there's so many factors to it. But again, because I'm incredibly blessed to have only had 10 brain surgeries, 24 surgeries in total, and I'm incredibly blessed to still have a high-functioning form of hydrocephalus, when a lot of my hydrocephalus warriors out there have spina bifida, or, have severe other traumas to go alongside, the hydrocephalus. And, I want to do all I can to, spread as much strength and acknowledgement and love and power as I can to help everybody, whether you've got hydrocephalus or not, recognize that, we are powerful because of what we've been through, not in spite of.
Yeah. You said it shows up differently for everyone. How did it show up for you, and how did that transition into music?
So for me, I was diagnosed at 4 months. Not everybody was. A lot of people, for whatever reason, they're still doing a lot of research into this, don't get diagnosed until they're a child, or some of them a teenager. In fact, I learned recently from the Hydrocephalus Awareness Association based out of Rockville, Maryland, that a lot of dementia cases are incorrectly diagnosed as dementia when actually they have hydrocephalus. So it's, I don't know why. I don't know how that manifests. I just know that I don't have as severe brain trauma as a lot of people. Music was one of the key components, however, in helping me to navigate my brain trauma when I was a child, in a way that quite literally helped my brain to redevelop and regrow. In some cases, it also helped me to remember parts, bits and pieces that I was struggling to remember. And of course, it just gave me a voice to express my my inner demons as I was navigating the struggles. It's a weird thing because, the brain is such a wild part of our body. There is no feeling in our brain. You could literally open up my skull and poke at my brain with a fork, and I wouldn't be able to feel it because the brain is just, it's the brain. But because it's such a complex part of us, the most, minute impact on the brain can affect you very differently than it will affect me. Whether it's your inability to talk or form sentences, or your inability to remember how to get from A to B, or your ability to write properly. There's so many different manifestations of brain trauma that can come about, especially as a result of hydrocephalus. And I'm very lucky that music in particular helped me to sort of navigate and heal those parts of myself. But at the same time, it's still a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really does sound like music helped you with your memory. And as you said, it helped you heal. Did you always know that you wanted to be a singer, or was it because of your condition and it helping you bring back your memory is what led you to music? Like, what do you think?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Bring it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what my life was like before I was 4 months. I was 4 months when I was diagnosed. I've got no idea what it's like that movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, like one path could have led to this, the other path led to that. I have no idea.
Such a good analogy.
Maybe I wouldn't have wanted to be a musician if I wasn't born with the condition. Maybe I would have. And maybe if I was, born without hydrocephalus, with a, a normally functioning brain, maybe I wanted to be a musician because I wanted to be the next Britney Spears. That's not me. The emoji sitting in front of you right now is an emoji that wants to use my music for a message, for purpose. And somebody who wants to, use it to help people recognize, like I said, that our traumas don't dictate our trajectory.
You left New Zealand, you moved to DC. How did you get to DC?
Kind of.
Or give me the, I guess, the roundabout way of how you ended up here.
So I left New Zealand after a very exciting 2014. I had left a super abusive relationship. I became the ambassador for Tough Mudder New Zealand when it first came to the country. My band hit number 11 on the top 40 charts. I came 6th in New Zealand's X Factor, and I won both New Zealander of the Year Local Heroes Award, as well as a prestigious teaching and youth empowerment award with my work through a university I was teaching at and the YMCA. I was like a memeaholic back then, and I came across this meme one day that basically said, if this is your comfort zone, this is where the awesome stuff happens. And, to this day, I still live by that unapologetically. But the whole thing for me is I wanted to basically push my comfort zone because I felt like I had hit the ceiling in New Zealand for where my life was at that time. So I was lucky enough to be born a New Zealand and American dual citizen. And that meant that I could apply for a job in Massachusetts, which I did with the YMCA as a camp hiking instructor. And I made the move. I had, $1,000 with me. My uncle picked me up from the airport in Los Angeles after getting stranded in China. That was a story. So I stayed with my uncle for like a week. And in my head, I was thinking I wanted to move to LA because, that's where Hollywood is and that's where a lot of the music industry is based. But I don't like LA. I don't know if anybody, listening to this has been to LA that often, especially in the music scene, but it's very plastic fantastic. It's very, what can you do for me? It's very me-centered, and I'm a very we-centered person. So for me, I kind of dabbled in LA a little bit, but I started my job in Massachusetts. That was a 3-month contract. Between that and a follow-up contract in Connecticut, I had 10 days off. Took a road trip with a girlfriend who was also going from the one contract in Massachusetts to another contract in Connecticut. And we went on a road trip to Indiana. We broke down in New York State. Her boyfriend at the time was living in Rockville, Maryland, which is, a hop, skip, and a jump from DC. And we ended up in DC by accident. And I kind of found myself thinking, there's no such thing as accidents. There's no such thing as coincidences. I felt, okay, this is probably where I need to be. And I had my guitar with me. So I went busking for, a few days while we were stuck in DC. And
for those who don't know what busking is.
Sorry, street performing.
Okay.
Yes. I would go to the metro stations and I sang for people randomly in the morning. And I think my first time street performing, I made $60. And I was like, oh, damn, this is awesome. Like, I thought that I'd hit the jackpot. So I was like, well, I could do this. If I sang every day for a couple of hours and made $60, I could live on that. So I came back from Connecticut a couple of times and kept doing it. And just, I don't know, I had this feeling in my gut, whether it was God, whether it was stupidity, whether it is sheer stubbornness. I made the move in November 2015 and have not looked back.
Yeah, I mean, I met you here in DC, and you were very well known in the DC community. Had won several awards for your music. And just so that listeners know, what is your genre?
Well, I pop basically.
Okay.
I call myself soul pop rock.
Yeah,
it's diverse. My fiance tells me that I'm like the female version of Prince because I don't stick to one genre.
no, I would agree with that. And so when I met you, you were performing in, you had concerts, you were performing on the streets, you were performing in venues. But on your website, I read that in 2019, you realized that you wanted to be more than just a singer-songwriter. What led in this, because this podcast is called A Bright Idea, what was that realization that you had that led you to I'm bigger than just a singer-songwriter, but as you mentioned earlier, I want to heal people through music?
I don't think I'm bigger than music or a singer-songwriter. I think I'm a yes and person. I think that's what it is.
Totally.
And I think a lot of it's got to do with the fact that I've always known that I wanted to be more than just a musician, but music's my love language. So that was all I ever knew. However, when I was 5, not kidding, I made up a list of what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that was a rock star, a teacher, a counselor, a mother, and a fashion designer. Because I'm ridiculous. I was 5. And then, I kind of, that always kind of struck a chord with me. It was, up until through high school when I was trying to decide what I wanted to study. And then after high school, when I started my own business as a vocal teacher. But for real, it kind of all kind of came to a head the first time after my then ex-boyfriend deleted himself. And I was on my way to his funeral and thinking, and you got to understand, this was my third death in a year. My surrogate father died from alcohol abuse. He was incredibly depressed. My surrogate brother died from a diabetic complication. My ex deleted himself, unalived himself, I often say, and then my dog died. And I was just like, there must be, I vowed on my way to his funeral that I wanted to do everything I could to help other young people remember that they are here for a reason.
Yeah.
And that self-deletion is not always the best idea. I'm totally, I'm morally, I understand that we all are in control of our own destinies, but it doesn't have to end in self-deletion.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the first time that I realized I wanted to do more with my music. But then in 2019, when I had a vocal student come to me and say, Emma, I'm not only depressed, but I also want to do what you do.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, cool. Let's write a song and, we can record it and create a music video for you. And that was kind of where it kind of all clicked into place. And I was like, you know what? This is, he's a happy, young, thriving young man now.
Yeah.
He's went to college and he's doing all kinds of amazing things. And, that was 2019, I think, was when it all kind of really fell into place for me. Using my music to, help others, help myself, whatever.
Yeah.
But also helping out young people in particular, channel their voices constructively, creatively, and productively.
I really like that. And, oftentimes when you go into a profession, any profession, but I think especially as an artist, people force you into a box. And so you mentioned a lot that you wanted to heal people, you want to help people with their mental health and realizing their own magic, if you will, without, it almost seems like you're like in the space of like music therapy. To me, it seems that way. But without like some sort of like degree in that space, like that kind of seems like uncharted territory. What do you think that you're giving your students or your youth that you work with? What are you giving them through like your teachings that you think are helping to change their lives?
You're right. I'm not a therapist and I don't want to be a therapist. I think part of the thing for me is, especially when it comes to Gen Z folk, Gen Z is not like Gen X, Gen Y, or even millennials, for real. They need something very different when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to teaching styles, when it comes to expressive, self-expression. They need more than just, I think, typical therapeutic styles. Now, music therapy, from what I have seen and researched and heard through the grapevine, a lot of that is based on listening to music and channeling those thoughts and, listening to music. And that's great. That's awesome. Brilliant. My whole thing is, as a coach, because I don't ever want my kids to feel like there's a power dynamic here. Often in the therapy space, there's a power dynamic of like, come in, little girl, and tell me about your problems and let's fix them. That's not what I do. What I do is I help young people to feel safe enough to recognize their own inner voice, their own inner knowing, and their own inner power by writing their own music, creating their own music, you know, chord structures, melodies, lyrics, verses, choruses, Um, so it's much more of a guided CBT approach, I guess, than your typical music therapy. Um, in saying that, again, I'm not a CBT therapist, but I think a lot of it's got to do with the fact that it's just I hear so many of the kids that I come to go to therapy and feel powerless and feel as if their authentic voices aren't being revered as valid or important in those spaces. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with therapy. I go to therapy. It's important. It's wonderful. In fact, what I often ask my kids to do is, especially if they are going to the therapy, that they schedule their sessions with me afterwards so that we can take their lessons from the therapy sessions and turn those into songs that they can then hold on to so they can remember the lessons from the therapy. Because, I mean, I will coach them to, their own understanding and thought processes as well. But I think a lot of the time, because of how so many therapists have been taught therapeutic practices, it tends to be more, okay, we're going to talk for an hour. You're going to try this, and then go off and do your own thing, which is great. But Gen Z is different.
Yeah.
They need things to sink their teeth into and remember, messages from. And I feel that music is a really effective way for young people to hold on to, remember, and repeat those lessons.
Yeah, I agree. And I really love that your focus is on the youth. I think that, like you're saying, Gen Z is different than some of the other generations. And just like the pressures that they're going through with social media, being brought up in as digital natives, they've never lived a life without the screens, the pandemic, and like all of the things that they have, taken. I mean, trying to catch up on in school. It's insane. I was doing some research prior to this interview, and I just wanted to read some statistics, but and you probably already know this working with the youth, but according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, adolescent mental health continues to worsen. So this is a 2021 report that more than 4 in 10 students felt persistently sad or helpless, and nearly 1/3 experienced poor mental health. And also in the study, in 2021, more than 1 in 5 students seriously considered attempting suicide, and 1 in 10 attempted suicide. So I just want to talk. You talked a lot about the brain and about youth and about. I want to know if you could talk to us about the brain and how singing and songwriting specifically help with mental health.
Can I just pause that question for one moment because you skipped right past the social media aspect?
Okay.
One of the things that I think is really important for us to recognize when we are raising these Gen Z folk is that, you know, we spend a lot of time and energy trying to butt up against social media because of how damaging and scary it can be. But one of the things I've found has been the more positive content we put out there, the more opportunities we have to actually construct and reconstruct and deconstruct and reconstruct those algorithms to work in our favor. So imagine your child, watching TikTok or whatever, and then coming across this harmful material. Yes, of course, if they continue to watch it, it's going to continue to feed the algorithm that's the kind of content that we should be feeding them. However, if we can support your young person to create content that is empowering, positive, thought-provoking, lessons into blessings, type thing, music, it's a really beautiful way and powerful way for us to then just reshape those algorithms in a way that serves your young people positively. So that's another way that we kind of that I find really helpful when it comes to navigating Gen Z. Okay, so back to the brain and back to music, and shifting that negative space. So I did a little bit of research into this when I was doing my TEDx talk last year. Again, I'm not a scientist, but one of the things that we all know is that listening to music has a significant impact on our oxytocin and dopamine levels. Now, our dopamine levels are, the happy hormone that helps us to, feel good about ourselves and the world around us. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone. So when we are able to, create and use music as a tool for self-expression and self-healing and self-understanding and just self-actualization, not only is that triggering, our need for validation and just the ability to be heard and feel seen and loved and accepted, but also because of the dopamine and the oxytocin levels that have been elevated, people start to feel safer. Of course, also our cortisol levels lower significantly when we listen to music, no matter what the genre. It doesn't matter if you are listening to heavy metal, gangster rap, or country or classical. It doesn't matter. Listening to music has a profound effect on our stress levels. So when we have those lowering stress levels, lowering cortisol levels, as well as those, increase in dopamine and oxytocin, we're able to at least get us out of the danger zone when it comes to our overwhelming, of those thoughts. And when you couple that with, oh shoot, now I feel heard. Now I'm actually being listened to. This is the thing. I think it can be really dangerous sometimes to only we read one report, and I'm not getting at you at all, because hasn't been, I think, nearly enough research done into the mental health ramifications of the pandemic, because we just haven't had enough time. We don't know. I remember in 2021, the World Health Organization guesstimated it would take the average adult 10 years to mentally recover from the pandemic. And it was 2020. It was in November 2020. We were just 6 months into the pandemic, and they were already guesstimating it would take the average adult 10 years to recover. 6 months in, adult. There was no research done whatsoever on the ramifications for teenagers. And so when we have like these reports coming out, I think it's really easy for us to be like, oh shoot, that's a really scary fact. And it is.
Yeah.
But we also are not, the reports only say one thing. And there's only really one or two reports out there. One of the things that I found firsthand with my clients is it's not just that the mental health, struggles are there. They're also just not feeling heard or listened to. And that's why we're flocking to things like Instagram Reels and TikTok and whatever else, because suddenly these kids have this way to feel seen and heard by audiences that wouldn't otherwise not give them the time of day. And I think that's a really important thing to mention, or to note rather, so that we can sort of, whether it's music or whether it's just having a talking stick at the dinner table, and teaching our young people to listen and, respond listen to understand as opposed to listen to respond, and then acting the same way in reflection. The amount of adults who I've seen also respond to kids because they feel triggered by something the kids have said. Music is a great way for us to have these conversations, using creativity as a security blanket so that we can hear each other, process what's being said before we then respond. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. No, this is great. And I'm so glad that you dove into that deeper, because I think that, you know, I think what you're doing and what your mission is bigger than just teaching kids how to write songs and sing songs through music. But you're really helping a bigger cause that I don't think has been researched enough, as you mentioned. Thank you so much for that explanation. I want to talk about your course, Youth Empowerment Through Singing and Songwriting. Do you mind walking us through what the course is? Like, what do you cover? How long it is? Kind of the details.
Sure. So I have a course. It's a 6-week course, really, where it's a video course that goes through steps 1 through 10 over the 6 weeks to fully write a song. You can go as quickly or as short as you like, or as long as you like, rather. But it's really a simplified version of my one-on-one coaching, which is literally, I have a 6-week program, an 8-week program, and a 10-week program where I work one-on-one with you to discuss whatever is going on in your life, what's giving you stress, what's giving you pleasure, what's giving you pain, what's giving you, whatever. And then transforming those thoughts, feelings, and ideas or concerns over into verses and a chorus. And that looks different for every young person that I work with, purely because I obtained my teaching qualification in New Zealand. And that means that one of the guiding principles of tikanga Māori, which is the Indigenous practices of New Zealand, is that we teach the student, not the curriculum. So I'm not going to give, a young person who doesn't understand what a chorus is or a rhyme the same lesson plan that I would give somebody who's written a rap before, right? So it's really focusing on helping them get whatever's out in their head, rather, out onto paper, simplifying that down into themes so that they can kind of start to recognize, oh, I have all these overwhelming thoughts and ideas, but really I can simplify that down into 4 themes. And theme 1, by the end of 1 hour, generally speaking, I'm yet to fail, I will turn that theme into a fully completed song with rhyme structure and melody and chords with that young person. And whether they're singers, songwriters, poets, rappers, it doesn't matter. That's kind of part of the process and part of the magic. From there, they start to sort of take more ownership from lesson 1 to lesson 6. And if they decide to do the 8 sessions, then that 8th session or the last 2 sessions generally consists of us going into the studio to turn one of those 6 songs into a fully recorded song. And then if it's a 10-week program that they're doing, we don't just go into the studio to record the song, but we also film a music video along.
What? That's amazing. So how many students have you worked with so far, and sort of what is the response from them and also their parents?
That's a difficult question because one-on-one is very I don't know. I'm rather selective about who I work with. Mm-hmm. So one-on-one, I couldn't even tell you. Over the last few years, it'd be less than 50.
Okay.
But I also do group coaching. So in that case, I've worked with hundreds of students from all over the country, whether it's here in the DC metropolitan area, or if it's online to people over in Washington State. I have, hundreds. And then, of course, I've done similar kind of work with coaches, with other coaches, because they wanted to kind of figure out ways to cement their overarching coaching. What's the word in Māori? It's called kaupapa. Their coaching mantra, I guess, into a song that their clients can kind of sink their teeth into. But yeah, it's very, I tailor make a lot of the things I do depending on who understands and recognizes that inner voice that they have potentially been ignoring for a while.
And so, okay, so because this podcast is about entrepreneurship, and for people wanting to start a business, now being an artist, there's kind of multiple streams of income, and the multiple opportunities that you're kind of getting into. So for people wanting to start a business, but their businesses are essentially selling themselves, like take us through that process and how you position yourself to not only get exposure, but also earn income. So you mentioned you are a singer-songwriter. You also are a coach. You didn't mention that you're also an author. You've done multiple TED Talks. So how are you running and sustaining your business, which is Emma G?
I don't think that what I do is right for anybody else unless it's right for them. We all have different ways to show up and show out. For me, the way that I kind of navigate the Emma G brand is twofold. One, recognizing that people don't fall in love with a brand, they fall in love with a person. I'm a person, and branding aside, I just want people to love themselves. And I want, because I believe that when you lead with love, compassion, empathy, that leads to a better world. So many of our problems, stem from fear and anger. And that comes from a lack of self-love, a lack of love for our neighbors, a lack of empathy and compassion. So that's kind of where the whole branding thing comes from me. For me, it's one and the same. You all know the person. If you love me, great. If you don't, that's totally fine too. I totally support you finding what's right for you. But yeah, and the second part is everything I do in life boils down to, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. So, I recently did my second TEDx talk. Yes, that was a hell yes. It was an absolute honor to be on that stage. Being able to run these workshops for young people at summer school, always a hell yes, because it doesn't matter how young they are, we need to be teaching these kids at an early age to love themselves. And it's doing things like my accounting. Yeah, it's not really a hell yes for me. I'm not going to lie, but it is a hell yes. It's spending some time in my pool. So, that's how I kind of balance things. Is I want to make sure that everything I'm doing is standing in my pool, doing my QuickBooks on my phone, to make it a hell yes for me, because I think that's important. Otherwise we burn out as creativepreneurs. We get so bogged down in the details that we forget to live.
What are you hoping to inspire in other creativepreneurs, using your word, or unconventional business owners who are looking to do what you have done?
What am I looking to
But what are you looking to inspire other people who are creativepreneurs or unconventional business owners?
I don't know that I'm looking to inspire anybody. I'm looking to remind people. Maybe this is like my New Zealand lack of ego coming through. I don't consider myself an inspiration. I consider myself a reminder. And I think, if people look at me and think, I see what Emma's doing, I can do that too. Awesome. Go do the thing. Do the thing that scares you. It's about your comfort zone. Do the thing, you know? Um, but as long as it's in alignment with what you're doing and who you are and what your beliefs are, I think that's really important, is that we take the time to make sure that we're doing things because we want to do them, not because we're told we should be doing them.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Before I let you leave, I would like to play a rapid fire game with you because we have some.
Oh, this is so unlike you.
Oh, all right, it's gonna be fun. All right. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge you're facing with running your own brand as Emma G right now, and how are you tackling?
For real, my current struggle is my Facebook page got hacked over 6 months ago, and I've had all of my access revoked, and I am constantly battling with Meta at the moment to try and get anything back. It's not happening. No cigar. It sucks. So the way that I'm trying to tackle that is either by focusing a lot of my efforts on my email list.
What is one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point?
One thing I wish everybody would learn is that you know you best. Work in alignment with that. Yeah. Again, I guess it's like, stop shooting on yourself. We don't have any room for shoulds here.
If you could write a book, what would it be about and why?
Well, I actually just divulged to my bandmates the other day. I've decided the title of my third book. It is going to be From Pain to Playlist, Turning Struggles into Song, which is the exact same title as my latest TEDx talk, which is going to be dropping soon, and just outlining, going into more detail about every song I've ever written, not ever, but, that I've released, and the stories behind what that song was about, how it helped me, how it served me, and how that can help.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't listened or watched your TEDx, I encourage them all to. I watched it and it was phenomenal. So I really enjoyed it. Do you have a favorite quote?
I have many. One of my favorites is, "You are loved, you are love, and everything you could possibly need lives within you." Another is, "Love many, trust few, always paddle your own canoe." And of course, my every single song I've ever written, it contains one of those punch in the feelings lyrics that kind of I keep coming back to on a day-to-day basis. But I guess just reminding yourself that even the heroes sometimes fall. It's okay. You can't have it all. Even the strongest have their days. Just be brave.
Love it. What's something we don't already know about Emma G?
Ooh, something you don't know about me is rapid fire. I broke my arm when I was 9 years old, my left arm, playing tag, and it was my crush that tagged me before I slipped over and broke my arm, and he felt awful.
No, I was going to ask if he helped you up. I was going to say, like, boy, oh my God, that's awful. Did you have to wear a cast?
It was bright blue because that's my favorite color.
Did everyone, did it? I remember, like, people used to sign your cast when you were like,
oh yeah,
they do that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. What's next for Emma G?
Next, well, I'm currently releasing a single every month in honor of an awareness for cause throughout the year of 2023. I am waiting for TEDx to process and edit my latest TEDx presentation, From Pain to Playlist, Turning Struggles into Song. I will be writing a book of the same thing. And I'm looking at doing a couple of mini tours, I think, next year with some new music as well. But apart from that, I think, the main big next thing is I'm getting married. So that's exciting.
That is so exciting. Congratulations. That's so
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah.
Amazing. And where can people find you?
Everywhere except for Facebook.
Not. That's awful.
Yeah, but the best way is to find me on emmagmusic.com or Emma G Music on most social media platforms.
Emma, thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to speak with us.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Emma. That's it for this week's episode of A Bright Idea. Tune in each week as we interview entrepreneurs to find out their aha moments that launched their businesses. Today's episode featured Emma G, singer-songwriter, author, 2-time TEDx speaker, and youth empowerment coach. You can support her business by going to emmagmusic.com and following her on all social platforms. We're building a community of support here on A Bright Idea, so follow Emma G on social media, give a review, and tell all your friends. Until next week, I'm Amber Key.